Hey guys, my name is xOctoManx and this is part 4 of my shop system tutorial series where we are creating some kind of weapon shop. This is again a Patreon supported tutorial series, so if you like to become a patron as well, so feel free to go to patreon.com/xOctoManx and yeah, become one. Anyways, what we're gonna do in this part is we're gonna finalize or finish up the buy button itself, so it's going to show us the correct data when we have already bought an item or not, and when we are using one or are able to use one, depending on the stats or actually the shop system itself, when something has been bought but is not going to be used or can be used at this particular point. Also, we're gonna go over and save and load all the data, so we are able to load them later on when we are restarting the game and all the other things. We know, okay, we already have been bought maybe the kitchen knife or the army knife or whatever, and we also are not able to rebuy those those things. So what we're gonna go over is we're gonna start with the buy button itself. So make sure you open this one up in Mono Develop, and once it's open, we're gonna start over or continue. I'm gonna zoom in a bit so you can see stuff better. What we want to, or what we need to do is we need to update the user interface, or actually the text element, depending on the state the button is currently on, or actually what is the currently used button, or what we currently could be able to use when we have bought that. So the first things first, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are also calling update buy button once we already buying this in this particular part in here. I'm gonna show you what I mean by that is when I'm pressing play and I'm going to buy the kitchen knife and click the button once, it still stays on buy, but this change is already this text is already updating, so we know, okay, this has been sold out. But when we are clicking this once again, then it's going to change to using, because it has been bought already. What we need to do is we already need to change this one to be using when we are buying that. If you don't like that, then you need to create another button for this one, so you're able to use and using or rename all of that and create another one. But the patron requested to say, okay, once we have bought that one, I want to use this instantly, and after that we are able to change whatever we are using currently at any point. So what I do is I just call the update buy button function also when I'm buying the weapon itself. So gonna pass this over here, don't forget to save, and of course retest if everything works. So when I'm now buying the kitchen knife, it automatically starts to use the button, the weapon. Again, you need to make sure that you set the ID of your weapon system at that point as well. So set weapon ID in your system, or whatever. So you make sure that the correct weapon has been loaded on your character when you have bought this one, so you automatically switch that. Make sure you change this at that point. And also let's see, has been bought already. Actually, we don't need to update the buy button, I believe, at this particular point. Well, not just because of the text. We need to. Okay, so what we also want to do is we would need to loop through all the bought already buttons and update the ones we don't want to use. So let's assume we have bought 2 weapons already and we click on them. We would get this debug line. Okay, you have been, this particular weapon has been bought already. The buy button is going to be updated with the text using. But what we also need to do is all the ones which has been bought already need to change the text back to use. Gonna demonstrate this pretty quick. Gonna go into the shop panel, and let's say we have bought this too already. We need to find a way to update the buttons as well, depending on board. We're gonna go over this one later on. So when I click on this one, I'm going to use this one at the moment. But also, when I click on this one, I don't want to be this keep staying on using. I want to make sure that this one gets the text use instead of using. So using means we currently use this one and we are able to use this one. So we're gonna change the text to be used once at that point, and when we are deciding which weapon we actually want to use. And this is what we're going to do now. So to do that, we want to create a nested for loop. That means two for loops which are testing and checking what are the buttons about, and change the text corresponding to whatever the state in the weapon shop for this particular button is. So what we do is, at first we're gonna say for int I is going to be equal to 0, and while I is smaller than the weapon list, the weapon shop dot and now we're gonna go through the button list we created the last time. So I'm not sure how I called this one. It's a buy button list, and we're gonna loop through that whole buy button list to get the component of the buy button itself, and then we go through the weapon shop and compare the data between those. So weapon shop dot buy button list should be the one. I believe this needs to be a public buy button list. So what we're gonna go for now is we're gonna change the buy button list from being private to be public, otherwise we don't have access from outside. Don't forget to save the weapon shop, and after that we should have access to the buy button list, as you can see right now. So open close curly brackets. So, and of course we need to make sure that while that is so, we want to increment I. The next one is, every time we loop through an item, we want to catch the buy button script on that particular buy button, because we need to get the weapon ID itself. I know it sounds complex, but actually it's nothing fancy at all. So we go through the buy button list, we get the component buy button where we're currently in, depending on whichever we are currently clicking, and then we go and we are able to compare the weapon ID within the second for loop with the weapon list weapon ID. So okay, we're gonna say button buy button is the type. We're gonna catch this one to be buy button, maybe with a small b in the beginning. It could also be the name buy button script, so we know, okay, this is the buy button script, not just the one we are currently in, but the one we're gonna read from the buy button list data, even if it's the same on whatever is calling this one. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to get the component from the weapon shop buy button list. I believe we need to copy that buy button list, and then we say in square brackets whatever the ID is or the item is, the item number in this case, and in here we're gonna say get component of type buy button. Open close brackets and close the line. Not this way, but that way, like so. Okay, so what we go and loop through the buy button list directly in the weapon shop itself. We want to catch the buy button script directly from the buy button we are currently looping through, get its component buy button, so we have direct access to everything what is inside the script which is currently the most important one is the weapon ID in this case, and of course the button text. So we are able to manipulate the button text directly because both of them are public variables. We are able to write in data and we read out data from that particular point. Don't forget to save. And now we need to create the second for loop. So in this second for loop, we're gonna type for int. In this case, we're gonna use the letter j. The second one is going to be equal to 0, and while j is smaller than the weapon shop dot weapon shop. Whoops. And now we go to the weapon list. Not sure if this is called. Yeah, there we go. Weapon list dot count. So the length. Oh yeah, that's what we forgot in the first for loop as well. So dot count. Weapon shop dot weapon shop dot by button list dot count, which is the maximum length of the list. Same here. And we increment j while doing so. And now we have the possibility to compare this button ID text from this component while we are looping through the first one, taking this info, saving that, and now we can, at that point, we can check if, at first, if the weapon list ID at whatever j currently is matching the same ID as the one in the button list, and then we are able to react to it. So again, we have to compare several things at this particular point. I'm gonna comment this pretty quick out. So what we want to check, has that particular item been bought? Yes, no. If no, then don't do anything. If yes, then we're gonna change this one to whatever we need. So does it has been bought? Does it have the same ID? So weapon ID match. This is going to be the first two, and I believe there's the second or a next one, another one. So we are able to switch the text again from this particular button text using to whatever, in this case I believe it's just use. So at first, we want to check if the weapon list, where is it? No, it's weapon shop dot weapon shop dot the weapon list, and now in square brackets j. So because we are inside that particular j for loop, then we want to see if the weapon ID is going to be the same as, and now we go and take the buy button script, which is currently cached. So a buy button script dot, and in here again we have the buy button text, and of course we also have, let me type this one, the weapon ID. So if those are matching, then we can do everything we need. Also, gonna open close curly brackets already. So the next one is, we want to check if this particular weapon ID has been bought already. So we say an AND, which is just an AND operator, as I may have explained in the last video as well, like we already have done in here. So if the first condition and the next condition is going to match, then we want to react to it. So again, we have weapon shop dot weapon list. I'm gonna copy this one over, and we say j instead of y, instead of I. So if the weapon shop dot weapon list j has been bought already, and we have a last condition where we want to make sure that the current weapon ID is not the same as we have on our current button. So this is the third condition. So we say another AND, and instead of what we can do is we're gonna copy this line in here. So weapon shop dot weapon shop and square brackets j dot weapon ID is not equal to the current weapon ID, which is currently saved in this particular script. So we don't request this button we are currently on, because because of it has to be like that. And since we are doing all of that in that particular for loops, we're gonna update all weapons which have been bought, but not the one we are currently clicking on or are trying to update, because the one we are actually updating or pressing on gets the button text using. But all the other things, we want to make sure that we change them to be use. So what we take is the buy button script dot, and here we have the buy button text or the button text, and we set this one, is going to be equal to a string, and this is just be use. Don't forget to save. Also, since we are updating that buy button in any case, I believe we can actually take this particular part and just call that after we are done with the for loop for updating the sprites. I'm not sure if that is actually needed. Currently we can actually keep them as they are, but since we are calling this one here and also we are calling this one there, we might save a step by just calling this one directly once everything else has been updated as well. Not sure if this is a fix or anything later on. Don't forget to save, but for now just keep in mind that you're able to do that also directly after this point in here. Maybe I'm gonna go and change this one later on as well. Okay, so back to Unity. I'm gonna let that stuff compile. Gonna say those two have been bought already. There's a small bug or error. Oh yeah, I forgot to say a buy button text, a dot button text. It's not letting me enter or input anything. Maybe it's going to crash in a second. I will be back. Yeah, it has been crashed. Give me a second to fix that. Okay, so what we do is we say button buy button script dot button text, and since it's a text component, we need to say also dot text is going to be equal to use. Okay, so I'm gonna minimize that. Let the Unity debug or actually recompile everything once again. The bug is gone. Pretty cool. So I set those two to board already. So when I press on this, you can see it automatically also update the other one to be used. And same, since I'm currently using this one, and now if I press on the army knife, this is changing from used to using, and this one does the other part, like sending this. So I can now switch those two button texts while I'm able to switch the weapons itself. Again, you need to update the weapon system you are currently in. We are not able to buy this because we don't have enough money, so let's assume we have enough money. Let's go to our game manager and give us some money in here. Gonna buy this. Automatically when clicking on that, you can see I actually use this one and all the other ones are changing back to using. So I'm only able to use one of those when I'm clicking on them. Everything else will be reset. Okay, so again, once you have bought this, you need to set your weapon ID in your weapon system. And the same is if it has been bought already and we are updating this one, you also want to set the weapon ID in your system at this particular point as well. It's not going to be, say, I have two at the same time. It's just this one or this one. The other ones are not, the other stuff is not working in this case. Or actually not, useful. Because there's an else if statement 2 times, so only one of those complete conditions are actually true. So it will be set the weapon ID in your system only at this point or at this point. Maybe I'm gonna go over later on and create something, I don't know, to change the system, but I believe I won't. Okay, and again, we are able to take this particular line and stick that directly behind the for loop, because we don't actually need to update the weapon shop, or actually the update the sprite when we don't have enough money. So we save, or keep that a bit more clean actually. So not every time we are clicking on the button we are updating the sprites, but when we are actually buying a sprite or changing something in the system. But changing something in the system is not useful anyways at all, so but still it will go over and update everything at this particular point. Okay, so now we are done with the buy button. Once again, when we are loading stuff in later on, or something has been loaded already, we need to update all the buttons, and all the buttons depending on what has been stored already in the save file. So when we are loading something in, then we need to update the user interface, and same for the money we're gonna start with and all the other things, depending on whatever has been changed or saved in the game manager. So again, now we're gonna create a save system where we are able to save whatever we have bought already. And when we are close the shop system, we're gonna load the correct data and close the correct data, or actually save the correct data when we are closing the shops, or we would close that shop system, and when we would open this one, it would automatically load all the infos we currently have, like the currency, like the buy, use, and using buttons should be automatically be updated, and that's what we are going to do now. So what we want to create is, in our shop system folder, in the scripts subfolder, or in the scripts folder, in the sub folder for shop system, we want to create a new C# script, and we call this one, I don't know, save and load, or just save load. So what we're gonna do is we pass all the data and create two functions inside. We're gonna need to save and to load as well. And what we can do is we can use actually our game manager object if we like to, and take this save load script and drag this just inside, so we have access directly to it when we are calling the game manager script, and the script, and maybe also just because of the game manager object, when this is a persistent game object, we're able to take advantage of it and get the component save load directly from this particular game object. Okay, so don't forget to open this one up in Mono Develop or Visual Studio, and once it's open, we can start to think of what we are going to do. We have two possibilities. In this case, the easiest one is not going to be saving everything in the player prefs. But for now, we need to take care of what actually we need, or do we want to save. And what we want to save the complete weapon shop list on its state. And if you remember, in our shop panel, this is all the info about what is every item in that list about. So what's the name, what's the ID, what's the chef, what's the sprite name we're gonna need later on, what is the price of the weapon, do we have this one bought already, and we would, let's assume we would save all that data in a player pref, we would need to make a big string line, or we need to split all the data and read the data later on back, and that's too complex, that's too much. If you have 100 items and for each item you have at least 5 states or strings, ints and floats, whatever, or even bools, this would just be insane. So what we're gonna do is, instead of using player prefs, we're gonna use a save file. Just one save file which is saving everything in here. It's kinda safe. That means it's not that easy to manipulate the data directly, because it's going to be some kind of crypted. So you have the possibility to, or you don't have the possibility to go in and change data directly in the save file, because, well, you have, but not that easy. Since it's going to use a binary formatter, so everything inside will be decrypted by that formatter, and that's what we're going to do now. We're gonna create that formatter style save system for all the data depending on our weapon shop weapon list in here. And yeah, that's what we are going to start right now. So to make use of that binary formatter, we need to use three more namespaces. The first one is using system. Nothing fancy at all, but we need the system to make everything run in this case. And also later on for the serialization of a data class, we're gonna, I believe we need to. Yeah, we don't need a system at all, but maybe later on we're gonna use that. Anyways, what we also want to do is we want to use system.runtime.serialization. So we want to serialize the data, and we want to use the formatters, and in this case the binary one. And also what we need is the input output. So this is going to be the system.io for input output. Okay, so we have those three. Now we can design our our system itself. We don't need start and update in this case, but what we need is at first a public. I believe it does not need to be public, but let's just make it public so we are able. Oh yeah, we need to make this one public. That's important. Okay, this is a public list and of type weapon, because we want to serialize our weapon class. We already made this one serializable, as you remember from, I believe, the first part. And also we are able to take the complete weapon list and duplicate that in our save load script. So what we call this one is maybe the shop list. It's going to be equal to a new list of type weapon, open close brackets and close the line with a semicolon. So this is pretty much important. We need something to load in the data and later on populate our save file with that particular shop list. And of course, when we are changing stuff back to its original, then we need to catch the data somewhere anyways. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create our save function at first. So we say public void, we call this one just save or saving, doesn't matter at all. Oops, we don't need app domain, like that. Also we don't need a semicolon because it's a function, so we open close curly brackets. What we want to make sure is before we start to save anything, we want to make sure that the shop list is going to be cleared. So shop list dot clear. Nothing fancy, we just want to make sure that we don't have any duplicates or anything else in the list when we are starting to save our game, or actually the shop itself. So you can comment this one out, like you remember later on what we are gonna do at this point. We cleared the list, the shop list, this one. If there's something in, it's not anymore. The next one is we want to add all weapons, from the shop in the list, from the actually the weapon shop list itself. Weapon shop list. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use a for loop, a pretty simple one, nothing fancy at all, to loop through the current weapon shop list in our weapon shop itself, and then we store the data we find in the shop list itself. So we have direct access to all the components, or actually all the weapon classes directly in the weapon shop itself. So for int I, as always, is going to be equal to 0, and while I is smaller than, so weapon shop dot weapon list dot count, we're gonna increment I, and while we are looping through, we're gonna say shop list dot add, and now we need to know what are we going to add is actually the loop through thing from the loop through weapon directly in the weapon shop itself. So weapon shop dot weapon list, and then in square brackets I. And since this one is of type weapon, we're gonna pass this over in our shop list in here. So we have easy access now directly into the shop list, and we can also directly save the complete list as it is. We're gonna go over that in just a second. So since we want to make this one safe, we want to set up our binary formatter for this one and then serialize the complete weapon shop list from here. And how do we do that? We say a binary formatter is the one we need. We're gonna give it a name. We can just say BF or just binary formatter or whatever. And we create a new instance of that binary formatter. Open close brackets and close the line. Then we need a file stream where we have the possibility to stream the data into, and we set a file. I'm just gonna call this one stream. It's going to be equal to a new file stream, and now we need to have, as you can see, a path and a mode. So, and this is what we're gonna do. This is also working in mobile, but this is not working on web. So just keep that in mind. What we want to say is application.persistentDataPath, and then we say plus, and now we need a string. We start with a slash. So wherever the persistent data path is, we're gonna create a slash. We could also take use a folder, create a new one. But what I want to do is I want to say just the file name is shop.octo. You can also name this one dat, or I don't know. It doesn't matter. For me, it's just an octo file. This is just basically nothing else than a save file. You can also use save as a v, for example, or anything. It doesn't matter what your ending in here is, as long as you know how this is later on be called. So yeah. And what we also want to do is the file mode is going to be create. So we create that data file, that save file on this particular persistent data path, this name with this ending, and we're gonna create this one within the file stream. Pretty simple for now. Now what we need to do is we need to serialize the data, and in this case just we want to make sure that we serialize the data from that particular shop list. What we say is BF, which is the instance of the binary formatter we just created, bf.serialize. And what are we going to serialize? At first we want to use this particular stream, and the next one is the object or graph or whatever it's called, and in our case this is going to be the shop list. We want to format, or actually to store, this shop list. Pretty cool, pretty simple, nothing fancy at all. And after we are done with serializing or storing all the data inside that particular shop file, then we're gonna stream close. So we close the file stream, open close brackets, and close the line. And also we can actually print something like saved. Print just is nothing else than it's telling us in the console, hey, you have saved completely correctly. Okay, so when we are creating this particular file and there's another one existing already, it will be automatically updated or actually overwritten by the new file when we are saving. So there won't be anything else but just this one file. Okay, now we need to create our load function. It's also of type void. We can call this one loading, or load data, load shop data, depending on what you need and like once again. So, but before we load, we're gonna check if the files actually are existing we are requesting. In this case, is shop.octo already in the save files? If not, don't do anything. If it is, do whatever is coming up next. So if file exists, add the path application dot persistent data path, and now once again the plus, then int string slash shop.octo. Make sure it's the same name as here. Then we want to do something, of course, because this condition is true. What we're gonna do is we create a new instance of binary formatter once again. So binary formatter, we call this one bf once again. Say it's a new binary formatter. Open close brackets and close the line. So we have a new instance of that. Now we create a new file stream. File stream, we call this one just again stream. It doesn't matter because the old one or the one from saving is not existing anymore. Even if it has been or existed or not, we can always use that because they're just local variables and does not have anything to do with the other ones. And again, we gonna say new file stream. And open close brackets, and inside we again say application dot, and again it's going to be the persistent data path. Now again plus, then as a string slash shop dot octo. But in this case, since we are opening that file instead of creating it, we set the file mode to be file mode.open. Pretty cool. Gonna close the line by a semicolon. Now we, instead of serializing the data as we have done in here, we need to deserialize that data. And we need to pass the data back to the shop list. So what we can do is we say shop list is going to be equal to, and now we can typecast that, or we can, I believe we're gonna do that. We're gonna typecast this one as a list of type weapon, like this. And then we say, after we are typecasting this one, we need to close that brackets. So this means we are typecasting that as a list of type weapon. And what we want to do is we want to say bf.deserialize. And what stream are we using? We're gonna use just our stream we just created. From that particular loaded file, we opened this. We're gonna deserialize the files or the stream with the binary formatter and make sure we typecast the shop list as a list of type weapon. Okay, hopefully you understand that. And the next one is, after we have done that, so at this particular point we created or filled up all the data for the shop list, we say stream.close, since we don't need that stream anymore. But now, since we have all the data saved or actually loaded inside the shop list, we need to make sure that we are updating our actual shop system. So what we're gonna do is we loop through the whole shop system once again and pass over all the data back to the shop, to the weapon shop itself. After that, we also need to update all the sprites, and even after that, we need to make sure that we update all the buttons as I said before. Okay, and how can we do that? Of course, we're gonna create a new for loop. And we say for int I is going to be equal to 0 while I is smaller, once again, as the weapon shop dot weapon shop. No, it's not this one. We're gonna loop through the current weapon list in here, or the shop list we gonna save in here, like this one. We're gonna go through that dot count. My fault, I'm sorry for the confusion. And we increment I. So we go through the whole currently created or filled up shop list and go through every item we're gonna have inside. Okay, so while we are looping through that, now comes the point where it comes where it becomes interesting. Now we say weaponshop.weaponshop. And now we're gonna take the weapon list, and now we pass over the same item from whatever we are currently going through, and set this particular weapon we are currently at the same as our sharp list item currently is. So we take the first one and we pass that from the first one directly back. No matter what state it is in there, we're gonna pass the same stuff back to the first weapon shop, like all the strings, all the bools, everything which is inside. This again does not work with sprites. That's why we changed the system from sprites to strings with a string name, and that's pretty much everything we just did beforehand. Okay, also, so let me make a small comment in here. So we update the shop. So the next part, at the same time, we're gonna update all sprites, because now we know this item has been bought already or not. And if it has been bought or not, we're gonna update the sprites depending on the ID we're gonna currently go through. Or actually we could also do that somewhere different. Let's see if we have that function inside. Yeah, we just call update sprite and pass over the correct weapon ID. And then we are able to update that and telling whatever is the correct text, the correct sprite, and all the other things as well. So we use that function and pass over the weapon ID from the currently looped through weapon shop list ID. Okay. So what we do is we say weaponshop.weaponshop.update sprite, and again we need an ID for this one to work, and in this case it is weaponshop.weaponlist in square brackets I dot, and now it's going to be the weapon ID. Close the line with a semicolon. Okay. And that's pretty much it for now. Let's see if we have something else. Well, yes, we need to update all the buttons as well. So let's see how we can do that actually to make the save and load file complete. The problem with updating all the buttons is, since I don't have any current system I can use as a placeholder or something, I need to create one. Again, if you have a system already running which is holding the current ID the weapon is currently be used by your character, then you need to use that. But instead of doing so or creating such a big system right now, I just use an integer directly in my game manager object in here, or game manager class, which I use as a placeholder for my current weapon ID. So if you have another system like that, no worries, it will still work if you are able to access this particular integer for your weapon ID from outside. Again, I use my game manager. You can use your old system if you have one already, where you are able to change the integer, and depending on that integer you're gonna change the look or even the 3D model or whatever. So this is going to be just a placeholder, so you don't need to do that. It's just that particular integer which is showing me if the system is going to work or not. Okay, so this is my public integer of my current used weapon ID, so I just call this one current weapon ID. I don't need to set this one, or actually I can start with 0 if I like to, so I have no weapon collected or selected at the moment. Also, the cool thing is it's easily serializable as well. Same for the float money and so on and so forth. Don't forget to save. If you're doing the same system right now, then yeah, just feel free to follow up. Again, you just need later on to read the data. I'm going to show you in a second why, when, and how. Okay, because when we don't have any running system which is currently using the current weapon ID, we are not able to update the buy buttons correctly because the currently used weapon ID needs to be stored somewhere. So we have the possibility to set this particular ID to be the button be using, and the other ones which not have been bought is going to be used. And that's why I need just one current weapon ID. So I can also update later on the buy button itself. So I will change the system directly on the buy button as well, or actually in the weapon shop itself. So it's easier for us. So yeah, let's go and do that at first, and then we are able to set everything depending on that particular weapon ID and all the other ones as well. So what I do, I go to my weapon shop script and create a new function here directly under the update sprite function. Doesn't matter. It needs to be a public one. It's of type void, and I want to update the buy buttons. So I call this one update buy buttons. In this particular case, I can go in and use the weapon ID depending on what we are looping through, but actually it's not really complicated to do it as well, because what we do is we do the same as we do when we are clicking on the buy button itself, but instead of doing everything inside the buy buttons, we're gonna do everything in the weapon shop, so we can easy or make stuff more easy than for everything. And we have the possibility to use just one function in this case, depending on that. Okay, so what we're gonna do is first let's go to our buy button, and instead of, or actually we want to set our weapon ID to whatever the button ID is we currently have been pressed. So what we say is game manager dot, I'm not sure, it's game manager dot, and now we need our current weapon ID, and this needs to be set to be the weapon ID we are currently pressing on. Like so. So this is how you can just change your system or your ID to whatever the button is you have been clicked and the weapon you have bought already. Then everything gets updated, like in the update button, as you can see here. We're gonna change this in a moment as well. And also we want to change the weapon ID when we just click on that and it has been bought already. So we can change the current weapon ID on button press. Gonna save that. I'm going to show you this pretty quick at first, I believe, so I also make sure everything is going to work. So I let Unity compile everything. If there are any errors, we will know that in a moment. Here we go. Here we have our current weapon ID. I give myself a bit more money in the beginning. Also make sure my shop panel, those haven't been bought already, so we are able to do so. So currently when we are starting our game, we have on my game manager, we don't have any current weapon ID, so it's zeroed out. But now when I press on the knife, the current weapon ID is going to be changed to 1, as you can see right now, and we are using this one. When I buy this one, I'm using weapon ID 2, and also the text is changing correctly. So when I now switch back and forth, you can see it's switching between 1 and 2. And also, we should be able to get the container, but as you can see, the weapon ID is not changing because, we are not currently using this one. So this could be one kind of system you're able to use for your weapon shop system later on, and depending on that particular ID you can change the look of your 3D model or load in the correct weapon depending on that ID. Pretty easy, nothing fancy at all, because this is public and can be read out at any particular point of your game, or actually when you're talking or going into the weapon shop itself. So just use an easy integer, and that's pretty much everything you need for that to run. Okay, since we're changing our weapon ID at those particular points in our fancy weapon system, we're gonna go to our weapon shop, into our newly created update button or update buy button. What we want to do is, or what we could do is, we could catch at first the current weapon ID, or we just read it directly from the game manager. Actually, it doesn't really matter at all. But what we want to do is we want to loop through the whole button list first and get the connection to the buy button, as we already have been or have created in here. And depending on whatever the IDs are, we want to update all the buttons at the same time, depending on the ID and depending on the current weapon ID. Okay, so what we do is we say for int I is going to be equal once again to 0. We could also go into the buy button now and just copy and paste the stuff all over, because we're gonna get rid of that function anyways in just a second. So we go through the button buy button list.count, and we increment I as almost always. And what we want to do is we want to catch the buy button script. So we say of type buy button script is going to be the instance or the name of it, and we want to make sure that we're gonna get the correct info from the buy button list in square brackets I, so the number or the integer we are currently looping through, or the item, and we're gonna get the component of type buy button, and we store that inside buy button script instance. Like here, don't forget to save often, otherwise it might crash. So once again, a nested for loop. Again, it's the same about as we have done before. So of type J, or the name J. We start again at 0, and while J is smaller than our current weapon list dot count, we're gonna increment J. So once again, what we need to test is at first if the weapon is matching, or actually the button is matching the weapon list weapon ID we are going currently through. So we say if weapon list dot, let's see what it is. No, it's not dot. It's angled brackets, open close. In this case, J dot weapon ID is going to be the same as the buy button script. Buy button script dot, and in here we also have the weapon ID. So the one we just catched in the first for loop. Also, we want to make sure and the weapon has already been bought. So it is the weapon list in square brackets J dot bought is going to be true, so we don't need to do anything else at this particular point. And now we need the catched information, or actually the button or the current weapon ID we just created in the game manager itself. So I believe we're gonna go and catch this first before we're going through that. So we go in the first line in here, and we say we create a new variable of type int. We call this one current weapon ID, and we set this one to game manager current weapon ID. And now we can just take this and say if the weapon list in square brackets J dot weapon ID is not equal the current weapon ID. So only if everything of that is going to match, then we want to set the buy button script dot button text dot text to be used. And now we have an else if statement. So else if, and now we're gonna request everything once again, but with one small difference. And in this case, it is matching the current weapon ID we're gonna have when we are gonna find some of that, instead of using the text use, we're gonna set this one to be using. So this is matching, and we are using the using text on the button itself. Also, what we're gonna do is we can actually get rid of everything in here. I'm gonna just toggle command or command everything out until a particular point, which means until this point. And instead of doing everything directly inside this particular weapon shop, we just need to call the update by buttons function directly from the by button itself. So we say weapon shop dot weapon shop dot, and now we need the by update by buttons, and we call that just that function. So when we are doing that, yeah, we're gonna do the same as we do here. So at first we go and update the by button, then we go in, yeah, we call the by button itself from here and from here. Then we call that, we yeah, update everything, all the by buttons itself, and we update all the sprites as well, depending on, yeah, whatever we have pressed, of course, and in that case everything. Also, when we're creating everything in here, we could actually make use of it as well. So if there's something set already in the very start, we could also go in and use that particular function. But the cool thing is, since we were in the save and load script, don't forget to save everything in here, we can also call the update buttons directly in the weapon shop after we have loaded everything inside. So we want to update the by buttons at this particular point. Don't forget to save the save and load script as well. Okay, time to test everything out. Don't forget to let Unity do everything for us and compile everything. Looks good. What I want to implement right now is a save and load button, so we are able to call that buttons directly, or that script pieces directly from the game manager itself. So we can go to our canvas, gonna create 2 more buttons, or at first just 1 button for this particular example. Doesn't matter where you place it, maybe just for the moment at this particular point. Later on you're not going to use anything, but when you're closing the panel, then you will automatically save everything. So when we're pressing on that, so maybe we're gonna use that particular button for saving, and this one just in that particular point for loading. So I'm gonna change this one, the text on that button, well, no, that was the wrong one, this one to load. Gonna make a best fit on this button, and what we want to call is we create an on-click event, we drag in the game manager itself, and we call save load, and we call the function loading. And the same for the close button in here. It's nothing fancy at all. Same one, drag in the game manager, say save load, and in this case we're gonna save when we're closing this particular panel, for example. And we can also later on, when we are buying anything, we can also call the save function. So we don't do that directly on that particular button, but on the buy button, for example. So when we now go and try to load, you will get what do we get in here? Let's see. There is a bot sprite not found in class weapon. I believe I have an old save file inside, so I might go in and delete this one at first. Okay, so I deleted the file just with a small function, as you may know already. Just a delete one, see if the file exists, and if it's so, just delete it on the persistent data path dot and then the file name. You can always go and do that at any particular point as well, nothing fancy again. What I also want to do is maybe give us some debug lines, so if there is no file existing in that particular persistent data path, then we're gonna get maybe a print message or a debug line, no file found, and so we can see that in the console. so we are not able to load anything at this particular point. So let's see. There's our shop. When I load, you can see, okay, no file found. Everything is cool at this particular point. Now I can also go in and use save. Okay, we get saved. And now when we're going to load back, everything will be loaded. We don't get any print message at this particular point. But when I now buy this particular weapon in here, oh, it's wrong. We need to change that in a moment. Once since this one is sold out already, and I'm going to restart the game now. And now I press the load button. Nothing happening. That means the item is sadly not updating. So I have some maybe some problem in here where the stuff is not actually updating correctly. So we need to fix that as well. Oh, I just realized we don't have to fix that because I just didn't press the save button. So when I buy this one, you can see it's sold out. But since I'm not updating or actually saving that when I actually buy something, I need to use that as my save file once again, or save button. So when I press on that, you can see in the console, okay, everything has been saved. And now when I restart the game, I press on the load button, you can see automatically this chef knife is updating correctly. So we get the correct data already inside. Also we get the sold out text, so everything is updated in there as well. And also the button has been changed from buy to use. There are some things we haven't took care of. The first one is, before we actually start to update the buy buttons, while we are on the buy button script itself, we need to set the weapon ID, the current weapon ID, to the weapon ID currently have, so it's updated correctly. So we're gonna put updating everything like on the buy button, update buy button itself directly after everything has been set, so the correct data is going to be read out before we actually update the buttons. Otherwise there would be a problem with that. So time to test this one out. Don't forget to let Unity compile everything. And when we now press play and we're gonna buy this one maybe, or using this one, you can see now everything changes correctly. And now we can actually go in and save that to the file. When we're gonna start the game once again and load it up, you can see those two are sold out. That's correct. Also the images are shown correctly, so everything is loaded correct. And also the correct weapon is going to be loaded. You may wonder why I tell you this, is if we are checking the game manager itself, it's going to be resetted to 0 when we're restarting the game. So when I now press on this one, it already says, yeah, this has been bought already. As you can see, the weapon ID is changing, but we are not storing the weapon, the current weapon ID in our save file. And that's basically the last step we need to do to get the whole system running. And also we are able, of course, to store the money we have once we are going to do everything in here. So that's going to be the last steps to complete the whole weapon shop system in itself. So let's get back to our save load script and let's see what we can do in here while we are saving and loading. How can we actually save and load everything which is in the game manager itself, so which is the float, money, and the current weapon ID for our system to work and run properly. So since we need to save also data from the game manager itself, which is again the weapon ID and the money, we need to change the system on the save file itself. So at first we need to have some base class, also as another class which is serializable and can hold all the data, including the list. And that's what we're going to create at first, and then we'll go through saving and loading the stuff a bit different to make the system completely running, since otherwise we are just limited to serialize the complete list but nothing else, like floats, ints, and whatever we need. So what we create inside that class is just another public class, and we call this one just save data, for example. And in that class we're gonna put the list itself. We will get some red lines in a moment, so ignore them for now. What I also need is another one which is of type float for our money we gonna currently have in the game manager itself, and also we need another public, in this case of type int, which is our current weapon ID. That is what we need to store in the save data class, or actually using the save data class. So since weapon is already serializable, money and current weapon ID actually might not be. So what we're gonna do is in the very bottom in here we say system.serializable. So we make sure that the save data class is completely serializable later on. Also, as you can see, we don't need to clear the list anymore, because this list is actually not existing at the point when we are creating the save file. So we can just get rid of this part in here, but instead we want to create a new instance of the save data class when we start the saving process. So we say save data, we give that a name, maybe data, and then we say it's going to be equal to new save data. Open close brackets and close the line. So now we can push data like the list info and all these other things directly in the save data class instead of just using the list itself. And that's pretty cool, because we also can fill in data for the money and the current weapon ID in that complete progress. So what we want to do at first is we say set data dot, and now we can set money to something. Let me just comment this one out for just a second, because I have to change something, or actually add a new function into the game manager class, so we are able to read the data from money. Well, I created this one already, so you might want to set this one as well, or create this one. Actually, you need to. At first, we have a get money info, which is returning money. So make sure you create this one in the game manager itself. So public of type float, call it get money info, and just return money. So we're gonna call, or actually request that get money info when and we get the money which is currently holded by the game manager itself. So when we go in our load or save load script, we say data.money is going to be equal to game manager dot game manager dot, and now we can just say get money info. Open close brackets and close the line. So now the data, the return of money, is going to be stored directly in the data class. And in the next line, we also want to save the current weapon ID. So data.current weapon ID is going to be equal to game manager dot game manager dot current weapon ID. So don't forget to save at this point. So now we have the data directly inside the data class, but also we want to loop through the weapon list itself and add to the shop list all the items we just have in here. But instead of doing shoplist.add, we're gonna say data.shoplist.add. So we add that directly in the data class, the same name as here, and add everything as we have done before. When we are serializing, we don't want to serialize the shop list right now, but we want to serialize save data, or in this case, the data, this new data package in here, or the new data class created. So we just say data. So now we have saved that into the file shop.save in that octo file, and we're gonna get the print out that we're going to save. Don't forget to save the script as well. Okay, so now we have serialized that. Now we need to deserialize everything depending on what we're gonna have in here. So I'm gonna get rid of this one because that is just stuff I have tested around with. What we need to do in the loading state is pretty simple as well, but yeah, we're gonna do that one step after another. At first, when we deserialize anything, we cannot just store this one right now in the shop list because we don't have access to it anymore. But instead, we're gonna create a new instance of save data. We call this one data. And of course, instead of list weapon, which is a type, or actually the type cast to that particular type, is not going to be this, but it's going to be of type save data. So we pass over object data to the save data class. Now what we now need to do is we need to set the other instances back to their original state. So we say the game manager dot game manager. Now we want to set the money inside. What I created in the game manager class is a set money info class. It's of type void. It needs to be public, and it requests a float amount, and we set money going to be equal to amount, and we update UI after that, so the text is also automatically updated by this function in here. Make sure you have this, don't forget to save. Then we go back to the load save script, and we say game manager.set game or set money info, open brackets, and we say what is the amount we're gonna need. It's actually data.money. Close the brackets and close the line, and so we get all the info back to the game manager where we need it. Same for the current weapon ID. So game manager.current weapon ID is going to be equal to data.current weapon ID. Close the line. So this is also going to be send it back to the game manager itself. Since it has been or is a public value or a variable, we are able to access this from outside. No worries about that. And now we need to fix, of course, the for loop as well. So instead of shoplist.count, it's going to be data.shoplist.count, because the shoplist is now contained inside the data class in here. And also at this particular point, we say data.shoplist in square brackets I. Don't forget to save, and yeah, let's test everything out. Don't forget to let Unity compile everything, and as you can see, we don't have the list anymore because the list is not serializable in this particular case. We don't need that actually, but when we're now pressing play, and let's assume we're gonna, oh no, we are not able to buy a container. Let's assume we just buy the army knife. So this is now sold out. It's going to be using. Now we save that to our data. And we also remember it's 7k.01 and it's currently using the current weapon ID 2. When we're pressing play once again, everything is going to be reset to its original, but when we are loading, you can see the money is already updated, it's sold out, it's going to be using, and the weapon ID currently is 2. Same when we are buying anything else, like this one, we automatically use this one. It's the weapon ID 1. We have less money left. We can save that on my button press in here. I could even save that once again when we switch the weapon, so we're using weapon 2. And when we now go in and load the game, you can see we are using money, using the current weapon ID 2. We have still the correct money left or back inside our game manager itself. It's updated and everything is cool. Thanks for watching the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thumbs this video up if you like it, and feel free to become my patron or donate by using PayPal to support me and my channel in the future. All links will be below in the description. See you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.